You should do a blog post about your setup. Those are always popular.
The problem is we have so many customers. I don't want to be like, oh, this product we use instead of this one. That's the problem with having a lot of customers.
We're talking dev environments. Anyways.
Yeah.
So we were just having a good discussion on upgrading to the new M4 Max. And it looks like internally we are in for some upgrades. Welcome, everybody. My name is Ado Kukic. I will be your host today as we do our third Ask Us Anything with our co-founders, Quinn and Beyang. Welcome, everybody. We also have YK, who's going to do an awesome demo of Deep Cody, which you might have seen if you joined our earlier live streams over the last couple of weeks. I was kind of teasing it. But YK is going to give us a proper demo, and Beyang and Quinn are going to tell us a little bit more about it. Welcome, everybody. Do you guys want to say hi before we jump in?
Yeah. So, hey, I'm Quinn, and this is Beyang, but you can also just, you can call me Beyang, and that's fine. You can also call us Cody or Sourcegraph. We'll answer to anything, and thanks for being here, and excited to dig in and show you some of the new stuff we're building and take your questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining. And for our audience, let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from. It looks like we have about 50 people on so far. And we want to know where you're coming from. I am currently in Las Vegas. Quinn and Beyang are in San Francisco. And YK, I believe he's home this week in Vancouver.
Yep.
So Ian from Riga, welcome. Cool. Well, we have a ton of questions that you guys have submitted, and I want to get to as many of them as possible. But before we get into the questions, I want to turn it over to YK to do a demo of Deep Cody. So YK, I will hand it over to you.
Sounds good. I guess everyone's going to be on the stage still. So if you guys have anything to say, feel free to jump in and, interrupt. And we'll get started. So I'm curious for everyone about like what your experience level is like, both your experience level in general as a software engineer and also with AI in general, Cody, are you familiar with it? Do you use it often? And while we wait for that, I'm just going to get started here. I'm going to start my presentation file here. So as Ado already mentioned, my name is YK. I'm a developer advocate at Sourcegraph, and I'm here to talk about Deep Cody. It's great to be here. Okay, so I think most of you are already familiar with Cody, but just in case, it is our AI coding assistant. And to be honest with you all, in the past, we had a little bit of trouble, figuring out exactly how to present ourselves, position ourselves, and explain what it is exactly, because, a lot of people have asked us, how is it different from this other product? Or how is it different from this other code AI thing I've heard about? It turns out it's not that hard for us to answer that question. Once we go back to the roots of the company, I wasn't there when the company started, but, Sourcegraph started about 10 years ago with this product, Code Search. That's a code search engine for your code base, no matter how big or complex your code base is. And it is essentially a way for us to help human developers find relevant code snippets to whatever question you have. And we've come to understand that, Cody, when it comes to our code AI, it is this. It is the most informed code AI. It already is. And we want to, keep it that way. And it is, partly because of the history as a company, as a 10-year history of working on this, code intelligence and code search product. And also because Cody now has the ability to use that as the, backend, as part of the context that it can use to better answer your question. And over time, what we've understood is that context is really king, when it comes to code AI. So what I mean by that is when you have a question about your code base, we can understand it and answer it better by fetching the right pieces of context from your code base, relevant code snippets from your code base, and giving them to AI by saying, based on these code snippets, can you answer this question? So this is what we've built, with Cody. It works pretty well most of the time, but it doesn't work 100% of the time. So in those minor cases, we got this piece of feedback like saying it's not fetching the right context, it's not high quality enough, or I don't quite understand why it's fetching these particular pieces of context. And that's why we built Deep Cody. So we're just gonna get into the demo, but I want to see what's happening in the chat, and if anyone else on the stage has anything to say. All right, I'm just gonna continue then. So Deep Cody is going to be available, now internally available in the model selection drop-down menu, even though it's not a new model, as I'm gonna get into in a minute. But I'm gonna ask a question to our existing method, to regular model Cloud 3.5 Sonnet as a comparison. So I'll say how many files are in this repo. What Cody does is it does its best to like I was saying, fetch relevant code snippets from the code base to answer this question, but it can't quite answer this one because it doesn't have enough context. It's given these 20 items, but that's not quite enough to answer this particular question. So let's see what happens if we ask the same question to Deep Cody. What it does is it looks at the same given context, auto-fetched context, those 20 items, and then it asks itself, do I need additional context on top of those pieces of context? And then it said, okay, I need to run this command to answer that question. And it's giving us the correct answer here. According to the terminal output from this command, there are 70,619 files. What's cool about it to me is that it is now able to solve an entire class of problems and answer an entire class of questions that it was not able to answer and solve before. So another quick example here, I'll say, what's on GitHub issue 5687 in one line? So I'm using the existing method here with Cloud 3.5 Sonnet. It tries its best to find relevant context from the code base, but it says, I don't see issue 5687 directly referencing the provided code base context because it doesn't exist in our code base. So let's try the same thing with Deep Cody here. Same thing, looks at the context and it says, what do I need to do? Or what type of context do I need to fetch to be able to answer this question? It decided to run this command, gh issue view 5687. And then it says issue 5687 introduces Deep Cody. How cool is that? Now, these two examples are pretty cool in a way that they're highly demonstrable. And again, they solve an entire class of problems that we weren't able to solve before. But what about something more practical? So I'm not sure how many of you are software engineers, but as a software engineer, a typical question I like to ask is stuff like, how does code is not up to standard, right? How does Deep Cody work? So this is actually a type of question our existing method is able to answer to some extent. With Cloud 3.5 Sonnet, it fetches relevant piece of context. Sorry about the noise. It is able to answer it to some extent. So let's go through it quickly. It says, based on the code-based context, Deep Cody is an experimental feature, true, that provides enhanced chat capabilities. Here's how it works. Deep Cody uses Cloud 3.5 Sonnet auto under the hood. This is true. And then it talks about this class, Deep Cody agent. It uses specific prompt guidelines. So this, what I've reviewed so far is correct. But based on my knowledge of how Deep Cody works, it should be able to answer this question a little bit deeper, a little bit, better quality. So let's see what happens with Deep Cody here with the same question. So given the context, it has access to a few different tools that it can use to supplement the given context. Perform a search, fetch entire files, entire specific files. As you saw, it can run terminal commands. and it can also access a web URL if that's necessary. It looks like it decided to perform a search, and it decided to fetch this specific file that's the most relevant to this question, deepcody.ts. By the way, all of this is open sourced. And now let's review this quickly. It says, based on the code-based context, I can explain how DeepCody works. A little bit of meta here. DeepCody is an experimental feature in Cody. And then it's now talking about the feature flag, which it missed earlier. And then it says DeepCody agent class is the main implementation. Main functionality, let's quickly go through here. I'm just going to jump over here. It says it reviews current context, can request more information using available tools. It's actually able to do that, twice by default at most. So it can basically reflect on the context, through a couple of loops. Then it adds new context items as they are discovered. So this is a little more subtle, but as you can see, by having Cody reflect on the context and having Cody decide what type of context it needs and how it needs to fetch exactly, it's able to answer a lot of questions, with a much better quality. So that's DeepCody. As I said, by default, it has access to these 4 tools that I mentioned. Plus, you can add more through open context. And the feedback from our community and people who've tried it internally has been, consistently positive. So, for example, Tino, our community member, said, I can't express in words about DeepCody. It used to be Cody Reflection. He tried it for about an hour, and he was really excited about it. He gets a lot of value out of it. So that's DeepCody. We really invented it and created it to keep the promise of the most informed AI and to keep improving on our strengths, as a company and as the code AI assistant that we created. I hope you get to try the current version of it. The way I see it, it's still experimental, and there is a lot of improvement, even though it's already pretty useful. For example, adding more tools, improving the UI UX of the flow, so what's going on exactly under the hood, and also doing everything we can to improve on the this kind of agentic workflow that we created. Basically, doing everything we can to improve the response quality to your questions, mostly about your code base, but about other things too. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, YK, for that demo. I have been testing DeepCody myself for the last couple of weeks, and it is definitely changing the way that I approach code AI and chat-oriented programming. And yeah, like we just posted up on the screen. If you'd like to get on the wait list for DeepCody, fill out the survey at the end of this call. And yeah, we'll try to give access to our community members and get some additional feedback, and hopefully get it in your hands over the next couple of weeks. So thank you again, YK. Now let's jump into talking about some of our new and improved features over the last month. Over the last month, we really focused on improving the performance of chat, as well as updating our autocomplete provider. And one of the coolest new releases that I think we've had is really a new and sleeker prompts interface. We've kind of changed how commands and how repetitive tasks, how you work with repetitive tasks with Cody, with this introduction of prompts and shareable prompts. Quinn or Beyang, do you guys want to tell us a little bit more about our approach to commands now with prompts?
Yeah.
Yeah, you want me to screen share?
Yeah, go
Go
for it. You want to walk through it, or me?
By the way,
Yeah.
do you want to?
Yeah. So, the idea with prompts is we saw a ton of people use our commands, and they would take something that they would do a lot, like, I want to make a unit test starter code in this way. And they'd have all these guidelines, and they make a custom command for themselves. A ton of you all are using that. And then naturally you start to say, well, I want to share that with my team. I'm using Cody in my company, and, I want to get other people using these. So, that was one thing. And then sometimes, it'd be someone at a company would start using it, and they'd get on and they'd say, oh, the out of the box way doesn't generate unit tests according to all of our standards. So we wanted to solve those two problems, and prompt library is a way of making it so that you can have a prompt that you make and your team can see, and then you share it. Anyone else who goes to generate a unit test is going to use the exact same prompt. And this is, think of it an extension. It's an extension of custom commands. But we want to take this further. So we want to make this so that it's not just a prompt that can be shared. It can also have context included in it. And it can also run a command. It could even iterate multiple times. And so this is our vision for how we can automate more of the stuff you don't like about coding. So, for example, the unit test, it should not just generate the code, but then it should run it. And if it fails, then it should take that feedback and go and, make revisions to the code based on the test failure. So we've got a lot of stuff to go here, but for now, you can have the prompt library. You can share these prompts with everyone else on your team and on sourcegraph.com, and you can make them public, and you can link anyone to them.
Yeah, I think the idea here is that there's a ton of different behavior you can unlock with LLMs through different prompting strategies, and sometimes you go and do the work yourself to figure out like what the perfect prompt is. So like I created one. See if I can go to the prompt library here. I was playing around with this computer vision library earlier, and I found that like the LLMs I was using make some common mistakes when trying to use this library. So I just added a prompt for working with this library with a list of tips and tricks that I could then reuse and also share with team members. There's a bunch of other prompts for doing various things like explaining code, writing code in the style of your own code base, obeying specific stylistic standards, writing tests that use the framework that you want to write, things like that. So we want this to become kind of like a point of leverage where if you invest the time to go figure out how to use an LLM for a specific use case, you can now then like reuse that yourself and also share it with the other people on your team that you work with day to day. All right. Any questions about that?
Very cool. I'm not seeing questions, but Benjamin called out that this is great, much better sharing prompts than sharing prompts via Slack, which is the current MO. So I really appreciate that comment. Let us know if you have any prompts related questions, and we'll get to them as we run through the list of the Q&A questions that we do have. One final update before we get into the Q&A, and that is our IDE integration updates. So as of this week, we have support now in preview for Visual Studio. And we will provide a link at the end of the Q&A if you'd like to try it out. But Visual Studio, Cody for Visual Studio is available, and currently it's only for Windows machines. But no wait list, just download it, try it, and give us feedback on how well it's working. So Visual Studio is our next supported IDE. Any comments from you guys on that support?
No. Yeah, we're
looking forward to getting these out.
Awesome.
We do have a question. Does the prompt library prompt set the system prompt? In your experience, does that make a difference versus user prompt? So right now, I believe it just sets the user prompt, but maybe we can make customizing the system prompt a thing later.
Yeah, and with OpenCTX, there's an experimental capability to make it so that you can programmatically set the context that will be used when a user is in a given like file or folder or repo. It's the auto include thing in OpenCTX. So that's another thing we hear from customers. They say, oh, if we're working in this part of the code base, we always want this Google Doc that has some of our guidelines attached. So that's a really powerful thing too.
Right on.
Cool. Can I share one more thing before we go to questions?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Can I bring the screen back up? Oh, there we go. Cool. Got the infinite tunnel. So I don't know, for those of you who don't know what open context is, it basically provides like an easy way to add any sort of like tool or any source of, any developer tool or any source of like technical context into this app mentions menu. So all you got to do is like write a little JavaScript. The JavaScript is kind of easily documented here. All you got to do, literally, I did this the other day. It took like 5 minutes. The interface that you have to implement is literally just this. So you write some JavaScript that implements this interface. It returns some metadata about what the name of the context source is, and then it gives you an option to specify items that you can @mention in that menu, and then items. The items endpoint then resolves any @mentionable item into like a specific snippet of text to place in the context window. So like I made one just for like the front page of Hacker News the other day. So like now you can tag in any sort of like front page, because we all know HN is a really, really good source of non-noisy and absolutely authoritative takes on the latest developments, right? So if you have, obviously this is like a toy example, but if you have like internal context sources, maybe it's like an internal doc site or whatnot, this is kind of like a cool way to integrate those into Cody. The other thing I want to show off is, so there was a question earlier about, the automatically fetched context. So in Cody, you can do stuff like, at the current repository and ask a question about it. Like, how does auth work or something like that. We've received a lot of feedback to the effect of, sometimes you don't want this to appear by default. So right now, if you created a new chat, it will automatically place this chip in the window. And a lot of users just delete that because sometimes you just want to interact with the LLM itself, or sometimes you prefer to like manually @mention files. And so we're thinking about getting rid of this chip by default. And so that's a point of feedback that we're interested in querying people. And we've also added the ability to manually edit the mentions here. So if you do decide to use this repository chip, there's now a button where it automatically copies all the context that it fetched and allows you to kind of like manually edit it. So we really just want to make context more like naturally manipulatable. And so, yeah, just seeking feedback on these two interactions, both the removal of the repository chip as a default context item and the ability to kind of like manually edit the fetch context in this fashion.
Right on. Thank you. Thank you for that brief demo, Beyang. And yeah, let us know your feedback. We did have one question related to open context before we dive into the kind of pre-submitted questions. Does it do RAG or just include the stuff in the prompt? For example, or actually this might be, this is open context related. So for example, DevDocs is massive.
Yeah, so I think to restate the questions, like when you @mention a context item, is it doing any sort of like search or information retrieval against that? Or is it just fetching something from a URL and placing that in the context window? The answer is that it's really up to the open context provider. So there's some context providers like that Hacker News provider where it will just fetch the contents of that URL and place it in. So I think we
lost you guys for a second.
I think we have some internet connectivity issues. Yeah, we're back. Okay, so just to restate really quick, it really depends on the implementation of the open context provider. So there's some, like @mentioning a URL, which should work. I see there's some feedback in the chat where someone's having trouble with that, but like, please send us feedback on that. We'll get that up and running. But like @mentioning a URL just fetches from the URL. And then there's other context providers you can implement. All you got to do is implement that like @mentions and @items interface, and inside the implementation of that @item interface, you can choose to do search or information retrieval on behalf of what the user specified.
Awesome. Yeah, I've gotten a ton of requests for that, like having the ability to do more pre or post processing of the data that it fetches and choosing what to submit in the actual prompt that goes to the LLM. So that's really, really great to hear. Awesome. Well, let's dive into some of our pre-submitted Q&A questions. We have plenty to get to, so we'll dive right in. The first one, why not use embeddings? Cody is not pulling relevant info when using at Codebase or at repository and asking questions.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the short answer is we actually do use embeddings again now. It's a part of our retrieval stack. It's not yet turned on for all customers because some customers have specific restrictions on what sort of hardware they can run with. But I believe it should be using embeddings for certain repositories if you're querying against sourcegraph.com. So if you're having issues with context quality, just feel free to reach out to us and let us know what repositories you're having trouble with, and we're happy to look into it and improve the context in that specific case. It's never going to be perfect. I think like any sort of like fuzzy query is always going to be a matter of some interpretation. We have an extensive eval suite that we're constantly looking to improve and augment. And so your feedback helps us extend that to ensure that we're covering a broader set of code and repositories when we evaluate and improve our context.
Awesome. And for any feedback, please join our Discord community. We have a community forum at community.sourcegraph.com, or feel free to email us as well, and we'll take a look and try to figure out what the issue is. The next question. What is the roadmap for open context? We've rolled out some custom internal providers in VS Code, but we would be keen to see the same support in Sourcegraph Enterprise and Cody Enterprise.
Yeah. So this is awesome. And we'd love to hear directly from you and what kind of internal providers you've written. So yeah, you can use OpenCTX in VS Code, and you can get the at mentions. You can even get the little annotations in your code to see like, oh, here's a UI component. What does it look like in our design library, which is on a separate tool? We have the ability to show that in code search on the web and with the browser extension, but it's not easy or really even possible to configure. So it's really just how do we expose that configuration? We are dog fooding this internally. We have a way to do that, and we want to roll it out. I believe that it will be rolled out by the end of this year, so that you can make it so that everyone who's using Sourcegraph, whenever they look at code, whether it's in their editor, on the web, or even that they're going to see, those links and have those at mentions available.
Very cool.
Sorry, I think the internet just cut out again. Are we back?
Yeah, your video is frozen. Oh, it's back. Cool. Yep, you guys, the video keeps kind of cutting in and out, but I think we can hear you. So jumping into the next question, now that GitHub has become more aggressive by adding multi-file edits and integrating a variety of models into Copilot, how do you stay ahead of the competition? Oh, it looks like we lost Quinn and Beyang momentarily. They might just be swapping out networks. So let's give them a second.
Yeah.
Can you hear us now?
We can. Yep.
Okay, good. Sorry about that.
All good. Yeah, I'll rephrase this question. So now that GitHub has become more aggressive by adding multi-file edits and integrating a variety of models into Copilot, how do you plan to stay ahead of the competition?
It's the primary thing is context, making it so that you can pull in better context about your code base, a better understanding. And we're completely focused on that. I mean, that is what's critical for Cody to give you the right answer or to write the right code. And there's a lot of coding out there. We are completely focused on the coding where people are working in existing complex code bases. So a lot of other tools might be targeting, different users, like, the kind of AI enthusiasts who are working on their own small code bases. That's a different product. Copilot is trying to be everything for everyone, and they're trying to make it so you can have like a, no code, create an app. They're trying to make it so you can make an iPhone app in 2 hours. We're completely focused on people that are working in existing complex code bases, because we felt that pain, and we think that's where 99% of software development happens. That's where it's hardest. So this means getting much better context about your code base, using more of the structure of your code base to be able to write code that's going to work and compile and pick up your standards. And also things to make it so that if you're working on a big code base with other people, because usually if it's a big code base, there's other people that, hopefully someone else at your company has already written a great prompt that writes the unit test for you, or that makes this fix for you. So all of these things that are, for that person working on a team in big complex code bases. And we are leading there, and everything we're doing in the product is for that. OpenCTX, which just came up, is another great example. If you're working on like a, iPhone app that you're building in 2 hours, or a small code base on a small team, you probably don't have much in like Confluence or Jira or Google Docs or Linear that matters. But I don't know, we've got like 50 devs at Sourcegraph. We've got customers with 20,000 or 30,000 devs. Yeah, they got to look at their ticket tracking. They got to look at their coding guidelines. And that's all the stuff that we are completely focused on. Turns out it's really hard to build a product for everyone in the world, and we're focused on that.
Cool. I'll also add
is
like
king.
another thing here too, is like we really care about like feature quality. Like we don't just want to like check the box into like every random thing that someone out there ships, because what matters for our actual users and customers is how often do they use a feature, and how reliable and how much value that feature adds. So, GitHub has had chat for a while in the sidebar, as has Cody, and technically they check the same box, but the Cody chat has been a lot better, and the context quality has been a lot better. And as a consequence, our users tell us that they much prefer that experience to the alternative. And it's really like making the quality of the user experience just really, really good. That's how you make a lovable experience that actually, helps people day to day, versus just, catches the next hype wave on Twitter or social media.
So we promise to not follow the hype wave in a dumb way. We promise to not check checkboxes in the product for the sake of doing so. What we need from all of you is go and hype this shit out of Cody. We love it when you all do that. So please keep it up.
Absolutely. And I just want to give Michael Henderson a shout out. He says, Cody fills my need to understand legacy code. Copilot doesn't seem to consider that to be a use case. So
Yeah,
good stuff.
our opinion is that like it's really easy to make a flashy demo with new code bases with AI, but if you actually look at the code that powers the world's applications, the applications that actually have real users, that actually drive real revenue, 99.9% of that code is quote unquote legacy code that has existed. It's in a large code base with complexities, and is probably decently messy because you've had multiple people contribute to it. That's the code that we want to serve.
Cool. The next question, do you have plans to expand Cody to assist with code PR reviews and or other integration points within the software development lifecycle?
Yes. So we have the Cody API, which is a platform for integrating other tools or code migration tools, code review processes, all these other things to use Cody's context, Cody's inference. And all these things are coming together. So we have a lot of customers that have built their own internal code review tooling on Cody that uses the code context and will post PR comments. We have so many customers doing that now, in fact, that we want to make that a first-class product, so that Cody will have a first-class code review product in the future that lets you customize it, but that gives you all the right starter and scaffolding to have an awesome experience. And the way that we're thinking about it is like all of this connects. If you're writing a prompt, you're teaching Cody something. You're teaching Cody how to automate 0.1% of your development process, like how to write a unit test in this part of the code base. And we want we want it to be like, you're teaching Cody all these things, and Cody will be able to use that stuff you teach it in code review, in your editor, on the web, in the background to run some big code change. And that's the beauty of having a platform like, Cody, where we can work across the entire code base. We're not just in a single repo, and we've got the kind of scale. So, we can be everywhere. So look out for a lot more here, and you can go check out the Cody CLI and soon the API docs that will be on our public doc site. If you are interested in this, you got some cool integration to build, then reach out to us. We'd love to hear what you have in mind so we can make sure it's possible.
Super excited to share more about Cody API in the coming weeks. I think we have some really, really cool stuff cooking there. So stay tuned. This one's much more of a feature-specific question. Can we have search history for specific terms? This will eliminate sifting through the history to find a specific session. It would also be helpful to be able to give each session a title.
Yeah, we should probably do this. I hope is that maybe like Justin, if he's listening, can take note of all the feature requests so we can relay these to the product team. I would like this personally myself. It'd be nice to be able to search through history and also have more descriptive titles.
Yeah, and share it across devices and with my team if I want to, because sometimes it's really helpful to, I don't know, paste a link to a Cody chat to answer a question. You can't do that right now.
Cool. Looks like Justin just posted in the chat. Upvote the messages that have feature requests if you want it, and he'll relay that feedback.
Love it. Thank you, Justin. The next question, do you see Cody remaining an extension, or do you think the route Cursor took by forking VS Code is the route you need to take in order to maximize Cody's true potential?
I think we want to continue to serve all the existing editors that developers are using today. That's been our philosophy from the get-go. There's a huge range and diversity of editors, and I don't think we think that there's going to be like a one-size-fits-all editor that just is used by everyone in the future. You got folks who love IntelliJ or the JetBrains family of IDEs. We have a lot of those folks on our team. We got folks who like VS Code, some folks who use Sublime, or Quinn and I, we're still Emacs users. We got a lot of NeoVim users on our team too. And the choice of editor is just such a personal choice that's tied to your kind of like how your individual brain works as a developer, as well as what language ecosystem and what sort of tech stack you're using. And so we want to bring the power of context and AI. Zed as well. Yeah, it's a good call out. It's an awesome lightning fast editor. We just want to bring, the context awareness of your code base combined with the generative powers of AI to wherever developers want it. And so I think that, there's certain experiences where it helps to have more control of the client, but in terms of, the future evolution of where we can add value and what parts of the software development process we can automate, I think a lot of that is implementable through kind of like a chat-oriented interface and through kind of like fairly minimal interactions with the editor APIs, being able to show completions and alerts and errors. At the end of the day, what we do with respect to code is still edit text. And so I think there's a reason why text-based editors are still the dominant way of manipulating source code.
Definitely. And I just shared Steve Yegi's self-driving IDE blog post is coming. So that should also give you a little bit of insight into how we're thinking about the future of IDEs and the future of what Cody will support. The next question, I am a Cursor user. Do you have any plans to implement auto refactoring or something? Cursor sometimes replaces my code, and it was awesome for me.
Yeah, I'm not sure which feature from Cursor's auto refactoring. If you're talking about in the chat when you ask it to make an edit, and then you can click a button to apply that. We have that. It's Smart Apply. If there's something else that you have in mind, then please let us know.
Yeah, and the Cody Smart Apply works really well. It works across files. You don't even have to have the file in question open. It'll show you which file it's going to make the edit in when you hit the Smart Apply, and it'll open it, go down, and show you that diff. Cool. So speaking of IDE support, are there any plans to update the NeoVim plugin? I'd love to see some of the basic usability updates to it.
Yeah, sorry about this. We've had to put this one on ice. We have done a lot of work. One, getting JetBrains UI to match what VS Code has. That was in September. Now getting Visual Studio out. We have Eclipse and Experimental, and NeoVim is the next one that we want to do, along with Xcode and Emacs. Those will come after that. We are looking for someone who's really good at writing NeoVim plugins. So if you have anyone in mind, then please raise your hand or send them our way.
We are hiring.
Yeah.
Awesome. This is a really good question. How does Cody ensure data privacy and security when accessing my code base?
There's a lot of things here. So I'll refer you to our docs, and different people have different places they're coming from. Sometimes, if you're in a top 5 bank in the US where, 3 out of the 5 of those are our customers, that's a very different kind of concern from I'm someone who really cares about my personal privacy and working on my own device. And the awesome thing is we have an answer for both of those people. We have Olama local inference that works really well. We've had that for a really long time, and a ton of people use that, whether they care about privacy or they're just on a plane with really bad Wi-Fi. And for the biggest enterprises, we've got all the things like zero data retention. We have a long history as a company serving these kinds of organizations, and they've come to trust us. We have very large US banks that are using our cloud offering, for example. So, we've got all of these, but it really just depends on where you're coming from and asking this question.
Sounds good. And Justin, if we could also post our terms of use for Cody, that would be great. If people want to refer to it on just how we're handling what we're doing with it. Happy to share that. This question, I feel having 2 co-founders that are very technical, that write code almost every day and use Cody every day. What are some of your best practices for using Cody effectively?
Yes, each of us, maybe what's the one thing that we do that, probably we should, I don't know, it's like our secret about using Cody. You got anything in mind?
I think so. One thing for me too, and this is really something that we should change in the UX, is I tend to have a preference for starting new chats if I'm trying to do a new thing. Whereas I see a lot of our users just like never start a new chat, so like they just continue to add like follow-up messages. And the way that works underneath the hood is that it will try to include as much of the previous message context in the context window as possible. So if what you're asking is irrelevant or not related to the stuff that you asked before, that can actually hurt response quality and also makes it take longer to generate. So I guess one of my tips and tricks is just to frequently start new chats if you're pivoting to working on something new.
Yeah, for me, I love it for writing tests. I mean, for a lot of things, but I think that's something I use Cody for a lot more than other people. I love writing tests. I kind of grew up in, first Perl back in like the late 90s, and then the Ruby world where everyone was all like test-driven development and would write tests first. And the number one reason why people don't write tests because, it's painful, it's boring, whatever. I think it's actually really good. It results in good code structure. And Cody is so damn good at writing tests, especially when you get a prompt that encodes some of the, suggestions or things that you like. And it is just so much of a better workflow if you're coding when you have really good test coverage, because you can get like instant feedback as to whether it worked, and you're not feeling like this constant 2 steps back, 1 step forward. So use Cody to write tests, start out by doing that. I think you're just going to have a lot more smiles on your face while coding.
Makes sense. Cody just keeps getting better and better. This next question, kind of maybe a follow-up to the best practices, but do you guys have any fun facts or statistics of usage of Cody that really surprised you?
Yeah, chats per day is a really cool one. So over the course of this year, the average number of chats per day across all Cody users has gone from around 3 to around 17. So this is across a lot of users, and even people that are not coding like 23 hours a day, like all of you are. And 17 chats per day is pretty incredible. That's more times than you brush your teeth. That's like a lot. That is a new behavior in software development that, I don't know, I think it's like a huge transformation. It's on par with like using source control or, using a different editor. It's like a big behavior change. So love to see that. What about you, Beyang?
Yeah, I think that the prevalence of chats, I'm definitely starting to use chat more in my day-to-day as well. And it's this weird thing where it's like, it's almost like a modality shift, because what we're used to is like typing in the editor and writing code that way. And I think as a consequence, like, for most people, completions is sort of like the gateway drug to using AI in the code. Whereas like chat requires a bit of a mindset shift, but when you actually do it, I find it frequently helps you stay in flow better, because it helps you think at like the symbolic or like architectural level rather than get lost in the weeds of the specific lines of code.
Yeah, for me, chat and Smart Apply is like a coding superpower. It's just unreal how productive you can be. The next question, in the future, will we be able to let Cody create files and execute commands? And then a follow-up there, what about Cody's own ideas?
Yeah, you saw with Deep Cody some of the capabilities that we're putting in. Obviously, there's a lot of guardrails to make sure that Cody doesn't, as someone said, run rm-rf, and we would never release anything that would, even allow that in any way. So, our overall philosophy is like, let's, build up from zero in terms of this automation, rather than pick a tiny, cool demo that, looks slick, that can do anything and, that doesn't actually work well. So we are getting there. We don't get credit if we make a cool, flashy thing and it doesn't get used. Enough people already know about Sourcegraph. We've already got a lot of customers. In fact, we would get massively dinged if we do something, agentic that doesn't actually work, because our customers would lose trust in us. So, we're just coming at this from the other direction. Everything we do, we look at, is this actually being used? And is it not just being used by like, I don't know, 1 or 10% of devs in a company, but like, is every last damn dev at that company able to use this and have success with it? That's the problem that we got to solve.
Right on. And yeah, there's like the creating files and executing commands. We have that capability today. If you ask a chat question, Cody will create a component for you, for example, where you can hit Smart Apply, it'll create the file. And we recently, about 3 weeks ago, rolled out Smart Execute. So if the code that is generated in response to a chat is an actual terminal command, instead of Smart Apply, it'll say execute, and it'll prompt you to confirm that you do want to execute that command. So we have a guardrail there. And then so it'll run, npm install for you, or it'll generate a, git diff, or, whatever the command may be. So we have some of those capabilities today. What are the plans for context limits with models like Claude 3.5 Sonnet version 2 in the near future? Will Cody be able to index the entire code base if it is small enough?
I think the interesting thing here is like, fast forward to a world where the context architecture is completely different, where you have a much longer context window. What happens to RAG, and how do we bring in, more of the right context? I think like just the kind of naive approach of like, put the whole entire code base in, like that's a start. But let's say you have a really long context window, and you want to make it work well. I think, the kind of sketch that we have in mind is, okay, it's 8 a.m. Everyone at a company sits down to start coding. And right at that moment, we put the whole relevant code base in the context window. We make sure that it's cached, and context caching is another big component. So long context plus context caching. So you got the whole code base. You take other relevant docs from other Google Docs and Linear and GitHub issues. You put those in as well. You cache those. And then if you do inference, it's all cached. So it's going to be instant and it's going to be cheap. And then you start to essentially have a ticker tape of what each dev is doing, the edits they've made, even maybe the issues they've posted, the task that they're doing at the moment. And that's like an append-only ticker tape. And you keep that cached as well. And this gets to be a lot of context, but with context caching, you can keep it warm for any user. And the fact that most of the devs at in a given team are going to have the prefix that's the same, which is their code base that they're all working on, you can exploit that to make sure that you're not having massive numbers of tokens being inferenced separately for each user. So that's a different kind of context architecture that's very different from RAG, and RAG is probably a component in that, but that's what we're thinking ahead. I know that there's been a lot of people that are like, hey, can you just massively bump up the context windows? We've tried that, and we're not setting a context window artificially small to save money or to cheap out or something. I mean, our customers, they do not want that. They pay us a lot of money to get the absolute best. We're optimizing for quality, and on the margin right now, it's not like more tokens equals better, but we are thinking ahead to what is a completely different architecture. And I haven't heard of anyone who's thinking ahead in that way other than a few academic papers. So rest assured that you are on the cutting edge of context when you're using Cody. And please share your feedback on that on that kind of model that we have in mind. Beyang, anything to add there?
No, I think it's exactly right. Like what you're after is the quality of the end user experience, and we're exploring a bunch of different avenues right now. So it's not just about the size of the window. It's about what sources you're fetching from and how you combine that into something that just helps a developer get their job done.
Love that. Here's an easy one. When will you support the latest Sonnet 3.5, which was released on October 22nd, 2024?
It's already out there. It was supported as of October 22nd, 2024. So if you see in the dropdown, it says Sonnet 3.5 parentheses latest now. So you've been using it all along.
Yep.
Yeah, we are maniacal about always getting the newest, best models in ASAP. And we are the only code AI tool that gets the early access, on our side so that we can prep to the models from OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, and Mistral. No one else can say that. So you always get the very best models with us. We're maniacs.
I love new models coming out, and hopefully we'll continue this cadence of as soon as a model comes out, we'll have it day 0 or day 1. How can Cody be made aware of the recent versions of the framework or a framework? Can it get the version from the package manager and give an answer that is tailored to that version?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I think right now, what you would have to do is you'd have to tag a Git repository that reflects the version of the framework that you're looking for. And that's not a super kind of intuitive or easy thing to do. But we could conceivably write an open context provider that does some mapping on the back end from maybe the framework version to a repository and a revision, and then use that as context. I'd be curious to hear more about the use case here. So are you looking to just have general ambient awareness of the versions of dependencies that you're using in that particular code base? Or are you trying to do something specifically with a specific package and that specific revision, and you just want to kind of deep dive into how to do something with that dependency? Because with the former, you can maybe rely on just the context that's pulled from that code base, because that will contain a lot of the usage patterns for how to use that dependency. But if it's the latter, then maybe we can build a context provider that's specific to targeting a specific package and version. So I don't know if the person who asked this is on the call, but if you are, either drop it in chat or we can follow up in Discord later.
So I actually think there's a general theme here, which is we would love to see like the bad code that Cody gave you and what the right code should be. Those concrete examples, that is most helpful for us. We hear either a lot of general things or a lot of, hey, can Cody do embeddings or longer context? And we want to know what's actually motivating those in specifics, because just adding in a new implementation thing is not always going to fix it. So be as specific as you can, and if there's private code you have and you feel more comfortable emailing it to us directly, then please do that as well.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Like having access to the specific inputs, the output and the expected output, that's the stuff that really helps us make the most forward progress.
Makes sense. And yeah, if you are the person that asked that question, if you're watching live, let us know in the comments. Otherwise, please let us know on Discord or the community forums, and we would love to follow up with you on this and learn more and see how we can help resolve and improve the experience there. I know we are coming up on time, so I think those are all of the questions that we'll take for right now. But I did want to do a quick community shout out. So we have 9 members that we want to recognize. Today we have, and I'm sorry if I butcher any of these names, Azenvolt, David Ickham, Foxzones, Glacier, our community champions, Kinlo and Pranova, Sinister Spatula, which is a great username, that Mike, and username is random. There's so many more, and we would be here all day. But thank you for those folks, and thank you for helping make our community a better place. And as we come to the end of our session, do either of you, Quinn or Beyang, have any final thoughts or announcements for the audience, or anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up?
We're busy at work. We got a lot of things come down the pipeline, and we really appreciate you all spend the time to join these sessions and also provide feedback. So thanks for being a part of the user community, and keep the feedback coming.
Yeah, and we just are so grateful when you all on like Reddit and Twitter and all the other social media places go and say, hey, I'm using Cody and it works really well. We're trying to be the thing that works really well, for like every dev out there. That means consistency, quality. That means, not following the hype train. So help us get the word out and keep on sending feedback. Thank you so much for everything that you all are given and helping us make a better product.
Yeah, and Cody is one of the few coding assistants out there that has the open source aspect, like the client implementation of Cody, whether it's JetBrains or VS Code or any of that. That's all open source. So appreciate the star on GitHub, and also calling that out in discussions where developers spend time.
Absolutely, and thank you to our co-founders, Quinn and Beyang. You guys were great. Thank you for answering and engaging with the community today. Before we wrap up, Justin is sharing a bunch of links to a survey. If you complete it, like we said, you can get on the Deep Cody wait list, and we'll give you access. Check out our changelog for all of the latest changes and announcements. We recently shipped out a game that was fully built with Cody and chat-oriented programming for all things open. So if you were able to stop by our booth and say hi and enjoy the game and want to play it at home, you could play it at ato.cody.dev, and we rolled out some new features there. Give us a follow on X, star us on GitHub, and if you enjoy using Cody, please leave us a review on either the Visual Studio Code Marketplace or the JetBrains Marketplace. It really helps us. And thank you for tuning in today. We will see you in December for the next session. Thanks all.
Thanks. See y'all.
Thanks.